puppy on his lap, cigarettes curling, smoking his political trap. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. He's a Republican dragon with his truthful slight, fights the battles unseen in the shadows of the night. From policy to passion, he breaks it all down, giving a voice to the voiceless, wearing his crown. Caffeine-fueled mornings, the smoke curls dance, Puppy at his feet, giving life one more chance. Through algorithms and bias, he cuts straight and clear. Michael's roar echoes in the hemisphere. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. No sound bites allowed is his ultimate creed. A dragon's perspective where facts are the seed. Standing tall on his battlefield of thoughts, guarding the truth that others forgot. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is No Sound Bites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon here in the Bronx, in our offices, and wow, it's been quite a week. And I'm happy to be back with everyone. I know last week everyone was getting ready for and enjoying the Labor Day holiday, and now we're back, and it's back to work. Of course, I'm now competing with the NFL, which is always fun, but this happens every year. We're kind of used to it at this point, and I'm not going to let that hold me back. So we're going to keep going, and whether you see the show live or you see it afterwards, I appreciate each and every one of you for joining us on our season 7, episode 35. That's 8 years of doing this every Sunday. So we appreciate and thank you all for joining us. For those who are new to the channel, we want you to know that we reach out every Sunday across the entire world to over 100 different countries on multiple platforms to talk about the issues that affect you, because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in free speech. It's not just an American principle. This is something that is true for everyone in the world. And you need to be involved, and you are involved in the issues that affect us all. And whether your government agrees or likes it, whether the internet overlords agree or like it, the fact is you matter and you are important, and we want to hear your voice. And so we do long-form political commentary here to do that every week in a conversation. This isn't just me talking to you, it's a conversation with you about whatever you think is important. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I'm always happy to hear your voice on these issues. That being said, we're going to move forward into the show, go pretty direct on into it. For those who are new, let me explain. The format is we normally start with any breaking news or old news that we want to cover. We then go into international news. We sometimes take a break, and then we go into the domestic news. So we try and cover a little bit of everything. Now, because for those who may not be aware, about 3 weeks ago, we had a double whammy. Our computer, our main computer, died. It's on a Windows 10 black screen of death. And we haven't had the opportunity to get that fixed because at the same time, my puppy, a 14-year-old dog, his name is Khan, as in Genghis Khan. No, not like the movie. I'm talking about the actual historical figure, Genghis Khan. He is 14 years old, He was having some issues, had to take him into the vet, and of course that was a $3,400 bill, which I have provided on the channels so people can see it. And so most of my money has been going to trying to pay off that vet bill. Thankfully, my puppy, we found out it's just that he's old. His heart's getting a little weaker. His liver is getting a little bad, but that's to be expected. He is 14 years old, but still got to pay the vet bill. So, by the way, any super chats, Rumble Rants, if you want to go to Patreon or join, if you want to join our Patreon, which is $1.50 a month, or you want to go to PayPal, make a donation, we appreciate it. It helps us to pay off that bill and also to get my computer fixed once I can take care of my vet bill. That being said, let's move forward. So, looking at some news I think is very important. One of the first things I want to start off with, and I think this is critical for a lot of people, and please clip this part, share it with anyone you know that watches YouTube, anyone who is a content creator, especially if they're on YouTube. Please let them understand this public service announcement. As some people may recall, in August, YouTube decided to start taking on what they called the AI age verification. By the way, if my audio is bad, let me know. I'll switch microphones. So if anyone can't hear me properly, let me know. I'll switch microphones. But it was August 13th that YouTube decided to take on AI age verification. We covered that story where YouTube is automatically deciding whether you, the viewer, is an adult or if you're a child. Now they're doing that under the protection. They're protecting children. What we really believe they're doing is censoring people. And this is their excuse to say that, well, we accidentally miscategorized all of the Republicans, the conservatives, the libertarians, anyone who isn't obeying and complying with the Democratic messaging. Well, you happen to be, oops, you got age verified, and your ability to hear different voices on the internet, to find out different pieces of information that the mainstream news media doesn't want to share with you, the Democrats don't want to share with you, well, that's just an accident. Now, part of that process, we believe, and we are seeing some content creators now come out and notify people, because we weren't sure how would that look. How would the AI stop people from being able to see channels or interact with content going forward, and to restrict and silence and try to eliminate a lot of content creators, not just those in politics, but anyone, whether it could be Nerdrotic, it could be Yellow Flash, it could be Clownfish TV, it could be Kit Cabello on Hard Lens Media, or Larry Sharp, or it could be myself. Any of your favorite content creators could all potentially be affected. How they're doing? Well, we now have an idea, and that is if you go to your YouTube channel, the way you're watching this program, and in the upper right-hand corner, you will see that you have your little icon for you, the symbol, your avatar for you. If you click on that and you go scroll down, and you'll see right below the settings for the appearance of the channel, where they have a nighttime mode, daytime mode, you'll see that it will say restriction mode. Again, that's restriction mode. And that restriction mode is a way to select whether you get to have, it's basically a child safety monitor. It turns on or off whether you can see all the content on YouTube or only child-friendly content on YouTube, essentially. Well, it seems that YouTube, Google, are automatically, via the AI age verification system, they're automatically going to some accounts and they're turning on that age restriction feature without any consent, without any notification. They're just automatically going in and saying, well, you seem to be a child, even though you're 60 years old, even though you're 30 years old, even if you're 22. You know what? Sorry, age verification. We don't like what you're looking at, what you're interacting with on the internet. So we're going to make you a child. We're going to put on the restriction mode, and we're not going to tell you about it. And now, what you will see how this works is it doesn't just eliminate channels, it eliminates content on those channels. So, as an example, you might want to go and watch Nerdrotic. Okay, he has a very popular channel, the Friday Night Lights, that program, and all of a sudden, several of his episodes will disappear. They won't be. You'll still be able to go to his channel sometimes, but a lot of his content will just disappear because you're in restricted mode. So that content has been deemed dangerous or questionable by YouTube and Google. And so they just delete it as if it doesn't exist. So you could go to a content creator like Clownfish TV or Shadiversary, and you will find that they won't have posted anything in 2, 3 weeks, maybe months. But in fact, they're actually up to date. You just can't see it. And that's because YouTube is denying you the right and the ability to see content that you want to see. They have made the decision that some of the content is unapproved. It is contrary to their political partisan ideology. And so they're going to deny you, a grown adult, especially for American citizens, they will deny you the ability to see something. And the only way to counteract that is to go into the settings, to find the restriction mode, and to turn it off. That's the only way. Again, this is something that we're just starting to see. There's a few content creators who are talking about it now. They've just found this. Some of their audiences have said they have found this automatically turned on. We don't know how widespread this is, but even if it's affecting just 1% of the people who use YouTube and content creators, you're talking about over 11 million people. Over 11 million people have had their freedom and their ability to choose content stripped away from them, merely because YouTube doesn't like it. So I want you to know about that. Please share that with all the people you know. Check for yourself. I've checked my channels. I've checked some of my friends' channels. And we haven't seen it yet, but it may be there. So if you're wondering why you're not getting notifications or you're not seeing some of the recent content of some of your favorite content creators, it's because YouTube probably turned that on because it's part of the AI age verification, and they have stripped you of your ability to make a choice. They're treating you like not just a child, they're treating you like a petulant child, and they're going to put you in a timeout, essentially. So I did want to share that with everyone because people aren't aware of how the AI age verification is affecting them, how the censorship that we're seeing over in England especially, but throughout much of the world, how is it affecting you? It's not that they stop you from seeing everything. They stop you from seeing what they don't like. So you don't know the difference. It's very deceptive. It is incredibly deceptive that they're doing this to people. And when they walk into Congress, just like they have done every year since 2018, when they get caught, they will tell you, oh, that was just an anomaly. That was a coding error. It was an algorithm error in our system. We didn't know that. It's amazing to us that it only hits 90% of conservatives, Republicans, libertarians, people who don't agree with Democrats and progressives. It's just a coincidence that 90% of all people affected happen to be people who aren't Democrats or progressives. And that'll be their excuse, as it has been every year since 2018, year after year. It's always a new program. It's always a new mistake, and it always affects the same people. It's really insulting. So I wanted to share that with you guys because YouTube doesn't want you to know. They just want you to obey. They just want you to comply. Also, I wanted to mention for those who are in New York City, if you happen to be a Republican or you want to hear what Republicans are doing, Republican candidates, tomorrow, on Monday at 6 p.m., the Midtown Manhattan Republican Club will be having Maud Marin. She is the DA candidate for New York City. She will be speaking again at the Midtown Manhattan Republican Club tomorrow in New York City. She's the Republican who's running against Alvin Bragg, the bought and sold DA of New York, who is working with Letitia James, who has not arrested Letitia James. He hasn't brought her up on charges, even though she committed fraud. But that's who she's running against. The mainstream news media won't tell you that she's running, and you deserve to know and make up your own mind, to make your own choice on whether you want to support her or not. You at least deserve to hear her voice so you can make up your own mind. Also, I should mention, for a lot of people also, if you're in New York, it's kind of funny. This weekend I had in the Bronx, there are supporters of Eric Adams who are knocking on doors, going door to door throughout the Bronx, and they're trying to convince people to support Eric Adams, which is kind of desperate, I think. But it's also, it tells us that it seems Eric Adams has no intention of dropping out of the New York City mayoral race. He still thinks he can beat Zoran Mandami, the socialist, who, based on a lot of polling, internal polling from certain factions and also external polls, it looks like Mandami is going to win. Unless there is an outpouring of Republicans, if there's an outpouring of Libertarians, Green Party, unless people come out to really vote, and usually in New York City, in a non-midterm, in a non-presidential year, New York City has between 27 and 35%. Basically, 3 out of 10 people show up to vote in these off-election years, which means this is a great year for Mandami to win the New York City mayoral race, because there aren't enough people showing up to vote. And if that holds true, then we will see him win by about 20 points. Not because, and I think Sliwa is the better candidate, and I know there are some Democrats who want to pick Cuomo, or they're not sure if they want to go back with, well, no one really wants Eric Adams. He's got like 20% approval rate. He's slightly more liked than Brandon Johnson out of Chicago, but that's where we stand right now. We've got Eric Adams. He's not going to drop. He's getting his supporters to go door to door throughout the Bronx to try and get some groundswell, get the Bronx, which is a critical borough for any mayoral candidate. It is the bluest of blue counties in the nation. So they are desperate. Whoever wins the Bronx will win the mayoral race. And Eric Adams is not planning to drop out. But it seems Zoran Mandami does have a significant lead. He is not backing down. And it looks like there's nobody really putting up any competition to him. So for everyone who believes Curtis Sliwa is the better candidate, I do. Please do come out and support him. Let him know. Let other people know. If you're not sure, I've covered Curtis Sliwa 4 times, 5 times now during this election cycle. And I do invite you to check out my channel, look at the times that I've spoken with him pretty much one-on-one, and I've had interviews with him asking him serious and tough questions. You can evaluate his answers for yourself so that you can have an honest opinion, because the mainstream media won't even talk about him. They won't talk about any candidate other than Zoran Mandami and sometimes Cuomo, and that's it. So they're railroading you into one decision. By not telling you about any of the other candidates, they are effectively pushing you into one conclusion. It's a one-way street. If you're watching just NBC, ABC, MS Now, if you're watching CNN, the mainstream media is trying to corral you into one choice, and that's Zoran Mandami, the socialist, who is promising every failed policy in the nation. Literally, every policy that Zoran Mandami is offering is a policy that has already been tried and has already failed in the United States and around the world. That is a fact. It's not a question. Look at Kansas City. You can look at several of the major Democratic cities. Everywhere, the policies that Zoran Mandami has suggested, he got them from other states, other cities, and every one of those policies has failed. Why he thinks it's going to work in New York City, I have no idea. But that's for people who may or may not be aware of that. By the way, Ron Stafford, I see you. Thank you for being the first in the audience to make a comment. I appreciate and thank you for being here with us. So that handles some of the business out there. By the way, I also want to say hello to my friend Kit Cabello of Hard Lens Media. Yes, Kit Cabello is a leftist. Yes, I watch Kit Cabello's channel, Hard Lens Media. Sorry, got tongue-tied there for a second. But I do watch his channel because I do try to see different voices to make sure I'm understanding what's going on out there and to get different opinions. And I have to tell you, Kit Cabello has been one of the most in-depth coverages of what's happening in Chicago, the protests against Donald Trump, the failures of the Brandon Johnson mayoral administration of Chicago, and the crime that's there, the corruption that is there. And he's been talking about this before it became popular in the mainstream news media. I've been following on this a lot. Not that Kit and I have differences in our opinions. He's a leftist, I'm a conservative Republican. So we have some differences of opinion, but we're both Marines, we're both Americans, and we do follow this. And I agree with a lot of what he has to say about how Brandon Johnson has ruined Chicago, how the policies of the left have not benefited the citizens in Chicago. And yet the answer from the left in Chicago, the progressives, the Democrats, the socialists, they're all saying double down and just stay the course. They have no new answers. They have no solutions. The problems still exist. And they will try and take, well, crime is down 13% in Chicago in 2025 so far versus 2024. Yeah, but they don't tell you that 2024 is higher levels of crime than in 2019. That the amount of homicides in Chicago are higher than almost any time since 2015. The only time that was higher was directly during the Summer of Love in 2020, 2021, and 2022. It was higher then. Yes, that was the peak of the Antifa BLM riots. But every other time outside of that small window of the lockdowns, there hasn't been higher death rates. Homicides have never been so high. The news media doesn't want to tell you that because then you might not think Democrats have the right answer and you might vote for someone else. And that's not where they want you to go. They've made their choice, the news media. They want you to vote Democrat. So they just need to find out ways of omitting certain facts, certain realities, so that you will vote Democrat. They don't care how you get there. They just want you to do what they say. And that's the trouble. That's the problem. So I did want to say to Kit Cabello, who's been covering the Chicago protests, which are ineffective. I think most people in Chicago recognize that doubling down on failed policies doesn't work. And you may not agree, they may or may not agree with Donald Trump putting National Guard troops in Chicago, but they do recognize something different has to happen. Someone has to hold the leadership, the elected officials in Chicago, hold them accountable, get rid of some of the corruption in Chicago, and come in with new policies and new ideas. Because what they have been doing has completely failed, and the people are not safe. Just like in what we saw in DC, very much what we saw in LA. Their governments have failed. They have made the worst decisions for the people, and Democrats don't care. They just want more power. So they're more than happy to keep doing what they've done as long as they maintain power. Whereas Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, doesn't matter. I could care less whether you like Donald Trump or not. It's immaterial. What is material is he making it safer? And when we look at LA, the answer is yes. If we look at what happened in DC, the answer is yes. Do I think there should be National Guard troops in Chicago? No. Should there be FBI, DEA, the Treasury agents? Should we use federal law enforcement that already exists and have them in Chicago doing their job? Yes, absolutely. Just like we did back in the 1920s and 1930s against Al Capone. Use the federal agents we have, the law enforcement already there, put them in and let them do like they did against Al Capone and the mafia. Let them go in and clean up the city of Chicago. And the same thing for the city of Portland. Same thing for New York City and Boston and most of the bluer than blue strongholds, Detroit, Baltimore, and get the crime levels down to protect the people. DC is a very unique situation. DC isn't a city like any other city in the United States. It's not a part of the United States. It is controlled by the federal government. So it's very different. But what we did see is what Trump has suggested has worked. Carjackings are down 87% already. They've had over a week of no one being shot in Washington, D.C. He has effectively made it safer for the people in Washington, D.C. That's a good thing. We see that the riots in L.A. are pretty much non-existent. The cartels have gone quiet in L.A. relatively. And they're not gone, but they've quieted down. They've started the rioting. They're laying low because they're going to get deported. That means it's made it safer for the citizens. Trump has achieved his job. DC, though, again, is a little different. I don't think National Guard troops is the right answer to that problem. I do believe the FBI, the DEA, Treasury agents, they are the right answer. And federal involvement is necessary. Kit Cabello, Hardman's Media, I agree with that. I think even Larry Sharp, Larry Sharp agrees. We need to change what we are doing. Because what the Democrats have done for the last 60 years, 70 years in many of these cities, it isn't working. People are not safer. Crime is not going down. It's down versus the peak of 2021. It's not down versus any period outside of the lockdowns. It's up. So they have failed. And we need to do something different. I think everyone should be able to recognize that. Even if you're a Democrat, even if you're a very partisan Democrat, I think you can recognize that. And I just had a tweet that I sent out to Hakeem Jeffries, who's like, oh my God, Trump's a dictator. This is so terrible. And I asked him one simple question. Hakeem Jeffries, what are Democrats offering that is different? What is their solution to the problem? We know the problem is high crime, high violence. People are suffering. What is your solution? I say the same thing to Brendan Johnson. I'd say it to Eric Adams, Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo. I say it to all of the Democrat, Newsom in California, Governor Newsom, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. I'd say the same thing to all of the leaders. Kathy Hochul here in New York. What are you offering? What are you planning that is different than what we have already seen for the last half century? The answer is nothing. They offer nothing. Their answer is vote Democrat, orange man bad. That is the full sum of the plan by Democrats. Orange man bad, vote Democrat. That's their answer. That's not an answer. That doesn't fix anything. That is not a solution to anything. That doesn't make anyone's life better. Yes, I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican. You may not agree with a lot of things that I may conclude, but I think we can all agree on the evidence at hand. The problem has not been fixed by democratic policies, by progressive policies. Socialist policies have all failed. That is an empirical fact. So, time to do something different. If you disagree, tell me why. If you think I'm wrong, tell me why. I'd like to hear your answer. If you think there's a better solution for Chicago or for New York City, for Boston, for Baltimore, for LA, Austin, Portland, if you think you have a better plan, tell me, what is it? Because I can tell you, Hakeem Jeffries doesn't know what it is. Brandon Johnson doesn't know what it is. Kathy Hochul, Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, they don't know what it is. Gretchen Whitmer, they don't have a plan. They have no idea what's a better plan. They're not even trying to provide you one. They're just saying, just vote Democrat. That's not an answer. That's why so many people are saying, don't defund the police. Let's get the police back. We know that failed. That was counterintuitive. It hurt the public. Let's go the opposite way. Does that mean National Guard? Maybe not. I'm not sold on that. I don't think that's necessarily the best answer because I trust Trump isn't authoritarian. Whether you agree with that, that's a different question. I don't think he's an authoritarian, but I think it sets a precedent down the road. It may be the next president or the next 3 presidents. Someone down the road will use the ability to send in National Guard troops as a way to become a true authoritarian. I don't think that's Trump. I think that's some president in the future. Could be a Democrat, could be a Republican, could be someone completely different. But that's my fear. So it's not that I'm worried about Trump. I'm worried about the precedent because I think Trump will be effective in getting down crime in the way he's going. But I think that's a temporary fix. But, it is a fix. It's an answer. Again, if you think I'm wrong, you think, Mike, you don't understand. I know the left loves to say that. They always love to say, Mike, you just don't understand. Yeah, I've only been dealing with politics internationally, nationally, locally, at the local, state, and federal level across this country for 20 years. Yeah, I don't understand. Of course I don't. Let's be serious. Most people, if you're paying attention to politics, if you're just living your life, you understand the issues we're talking about when it comes to crime, high crime, violent crime, gangs, illegal immigration. You understand it because you're living it. So no, it's not that we don't understand. We may disagree with the left, and that doesn't mean we don't understand. It means we have a different answer, or we're asking a different question, or in fact, we're asking for an answer, and the left has none. They have no answer. Again, any Democrat elected official across this country, if they have an answer and they want to say, Mike, you got it wrong, I will give you 12 hours of uninterrupted live stream with me to go over the details of how I have it wrong. I am not MSNBC. I am not CNN. I'm not Fox News. I don't have commercials to interrupt you. I will give that candidate, that elected Democrat, up to 12 hours to prove me wrong and to explain how I misunderstand or don't have the facts. 12 hours. And trust me, I've done 12-hour shows. I have no problem with that. If they can do it in 45 minutes, fantastic. If they can do it in 12 hours, fantastic. I will give them as much time as they need. I've offered this every single episode for 8 years now, and Democrats will not take me up on that because they know I'm right. They don't want me. They don't want to have to interact and have to actually answer a legitimate question, which is why they run to CNN and Ms. Now. They run to their safety zones where they won't be asked a tough question. And that's kind of sad. By the way, thank you, John, for joining us in the channel today. And thank you for the donation. John has provided us a super chat for $10, $9.99. Thank you very much. That will help to pay for my puppy fund and to also help me get my computer fixed so you'll have a better camera, you'll have better audio to hear me with. Again, if at any time the audio sounds like it's off, just let me know. I will fix the audio. So, with that being said, so we talked a little bit, and I wanted to talk more about Chicago in a minute. Did I mention Kit Cabello was on Jimmy Dore talking about this issue in Chicago, about the protest that he has gone out and he has live streamed going out, covering some of the protests. And the protests, they're really ineffective. I mean, seriously, they're like a couple hundred people in a city of millions. A couple hundred people in a city of millions. And the media loves to show you really tight shots of the crowd, but they don't show you a wide angle. They don't let you get to see relatively how big the number of people are. It's maybe 1,000 people in a city of millions. And they tell you it's enormous crowds. No, it isn't. No, it's not. And Kit Cabello has walked around and he has live streams of that in Chicago, showing the actual size of the crowds, showing the lack of focus of the groups that are trying to run these protests. It's not real. The opposition is partisan. It is political. It is not people. It is not the rank and file person living in Chicago and living in the crime. That's the reality. Let's see. So John just had a comment. And by the way, folks, I love comments. You can super chat, and of course I'll get to the comment faster. Or you can just leave a comment and I'll get to it as fast as I can. John says, Voss, I think having the National Guard go to New York City would help Curtis Sliwa and his election if that happened about 3 weeks before, especially if it were the 7,000 number that he wants. That's a good, I have considered that. And it could be, we could see Donald Trump at the last minute, an October surprise, that he would send National Guard troops into New York City just before the mayoral election. I don't think he will do that. Mostly because the GOP in New York State has failed. They are just as bad as the Democrats in New York State. Now, to be clear, New York State is a Democrat single-party state. Democrats control the governor, mayors, many of the mayors throughout the entire state. They control the state legislature, the state senate. That's all, everything that's going wrong in New York for the last 40 years is because of Democrats and Democrat policies, because Democrats have control. Republicans can't pass anything in New York State unless the Democrats allow it. That's a fact. So if you want to say, well, New York State, it's a mess, you can't blame Republicans for that. Whether it's crime, whether it's drugs, whether it's illegal immigration, it's taxes, it's the economy, that's all Democrat. And Democrats like to hide that fact, that they have control and it's their policies that have been in force for half a century, and they have failed. So we need something to shake that up, to change that. Now, Donald Trump could, in fact, provide that shakeup. He could put in the troops. Now, eventually, whether or not he does it in October for the mayoral race, at some point in the near term, I'd say by the end of the year, Donald Trump will at the very least mention and strongly hint at he's going to send in National Guard troops into New York City, just like he would like to do in Portland and into Chicago, and has as he has done in LA and DC. That's going to happen at some point. But because the GOP is so New York State GOP, not the individual people, not members, not rank and file members like my audience. We're talking about the leadership, not even the committeemen. And by the way, I have been a committeeman in the GOP in New York State. I've run for elected office twice as a member of Congress and also for the state legislature, the county legislature. But also, I've been a I was a county committeeman for over a decade. So I do know the GOP in New York State. And I can tell you, they have no vision for the future. They have no plan. They have no goal other than to maintain their status as number two. And because they don't have that, I don't know that Curtis Lewa would get enough of a bump if Donald Trump were to take this action. Yes, Trump wants Mondami to lose. I don't see any way that, unless there's something shockingly, some shocking breaking news that happens, I don't see that changing. Because the GOP, they should have been talking up and following up with Curtis Lewa 6 months ago. They haven't been. They really haven't been donating money. Matter of fact, I know for a fact there are several high-level GOP donors that are trying to support Eric Adams. They're helping to fund the supporters running through the Bronx right now, knocking door to door saying, hey, why don't you vote Eric Adams? Vote Eric Adams. He's a black guy. Elect the black guy. Curtis Lee was white. Don't vote for him. Oh, Mondami, he's a socialist. He's from Uganda. He's not a New Yorker. Don't vote for him. Vote for Eric Adams because he's the black guy. Literally, this is what some of the supporters are saying. And there are high-level GOP donors who are funding that because they think Eric Adams can win, because they're not willing to support Curtis Lewa. I think that's the wrong answer. I mean, very simply, one of the big issues for me is the lithium-ion battery plants, which I have covered. I've covered the protest here in the Bronx. I've talked about lithium-ion batteries and the dangers, like in school buses, that our kids are in, and the inherent danger our kids are in from electric buses bursting into flame, as they do on a regular basis. It's a very serious issue. And we're putting lithium-ion battery plants next to apartment buildings with children, a block away from schools, where the toxic, cancerous gases from the fires of these lithium-ion batteries will hurt these children for the rest of their lives. Think about East Palestine, Ohio. People who inhale those chemicals are going to be affected for decades, for the rest of their life in some cases. Same thing with the lithium-ion batteries. And we're putting this in residential communities. I know the one in the Bronx is about 5 miles away from where I live right now. There are 16 other lithium-ion battery plants being built throughout New York City. Not one Democrat will talk about it. The mainstream news media won't talk about it. They will not tell people that in their neighborhoods, their residential neighborhoods, they have this public safety hazard being built. And Democrats are happy with it. Only Curtis Lee was talking about it. And the mainstream media won't talk about it. You know what? The GOP, they want to support Curtis Lee. We'll talk about the lithium-ion battery plants. Talk about the fact that Democrats are perfectly fine putting American citizens in danger without their knowledge, without their approval, and they're just doing it. And they have no answer to what happens if there's a fire. How do you protect the kids? They have no answer for that. There is no answer. In fact, there's no answer nationally on how to deal with lithium ion batteries in buses, the electric buses that our kids are on. They have no answer on how to put those out or how to protect kids. There is no solution at this moment. And so they're putting these in our neighborhoods. You know what? We should have this conversation. Maybe you think it's worth the risk. Maybe you think green energy, renewable energy, electricity, that's the answer and it's worth the risk. Maybe you think that. We should have that conversation publicly. Since I want to protect, I don't have kids, I want to protect my neighbor's kids. I want to protect the elderly, those who are in my community that are older. I want to protect myself from the cancerous toxic fumes because these plants will go up in flames at some point. They all do. So, yeah, I want to have some protections. We should have this conversation. And if the community says the risk is worth it, fine, that's democracy. But at least then we made a choice. Instead, they're telling us to comply. That's authoritarian. Curtis Lee was actually saying, let me give you the choice. Let me make you aware. That's what the GOP should be supporting right now. And if they did that, and we had this conversation, and people were aware of the risk, and they could say, well, Curtis Lee was at least talking about this. He's at least trying to get us a solution. He's trying to at least protect us from this potential devastation to our children. Then you see Trump say, and I'm going to come in with 7,000 troops to protect the people from crime. Then you might actually get a realistic bump. You might see Curtis Lee will win. But that's not going to happen, sadly. But thank you for that question. John goes on to ask another question. It says, Elise Stefanik needs a boost in the polls. She needs more than a boost in the polls. Without a boost, I don't think she makes it for governor. And I think this will help if she's out there in front of cameras. Elise Stefanik, at this moment, she has unfavorability. That's what they call it in the polling. She's disliked 50%. The exact number is 49% in the most recent poll, Siena poll, was 49% unfavorable. It means about half of the people they asked don't like her, don't like Elise Stefanik, who is a member of Congress. And by the way, I have met Elise Stefanik a couple of times, mostly back in 2013, 2014, when I was running for Congress, and she was running for Congress. And I got to meet her in person, we got to talk. We met a couple of times in Herkimer County. So I don't know her as an individual per se, but I do know about her. And I know she wants to run for governor. I was one of the first channels out there saying she got to deal with Trump. The reason why she didn't go, she wasn't picked for the UN, was so that she could step out and she could run for the New York governor's race against Kathy Hochul, which makes sense. She's a woman, so there's no advantage in that. You know, it's a woman versus a woman. They're both white. They both are political figures. They're very well. Elise Stefanik is very intelligent. She's well connected. She's got a good track record as opposed to Kathy Hochul. It's a good matchup on paper. The problem is, Elise is not the most charming of women. And she comes off a little cold, a little bit stiff. That's hurt her. She's very intelligent. I can tell you that from my conversations with her. She knows the issues. She's not a dumb woman at all. And she's very politically sharp. One of the sharper people that I know in Congress. And I know many individuals in Congress of both parties. But her negatives are very high. I do not believe that troops, National Guard troops coming into New York City, and let's assume that when they go in, yes, there will be protests by, Working Families Party, the Democrats, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. They'll all protest. They'll say, no, stay the course. Don't worry about the crime. It's okay. And let's assume they do all that, and Trump still puts in the troops, and it works. It still will not give enough of a boost to Elise Stefanik, even with the endorsement from Donald Trump. Lee Stefanik would still lose in New York State. An endorsement from Donald Trump, the sitting president, should boost any candidate. But in New York State, because there is about 6-1, there are about 6 Democrats, well, depending on which part of the state, there's almost 6-1, at least 3-1 Democrats versus Republicans, and God knows, all the third parties are even less than that. She wouldn't be able to get over the difference. I reached out to, I'll say publicly, I reached out through back channels to the campaign, to the Stefanik campaign, or to her people, to be more accurate, and suggested she wants to win, she has to talk about Maha. She has to talk about making America healthy again. There is no way that any Republican in New York State who's going for a statewide office can win without being fully committed to making America healthy. She's not. And she doesn't have any plan to do that. She can't win. And I think that any candidate who appears, who is in support of making America healthy again, who is committed to trying to protect our future, our children, to help our elderly, by making sure America is as healthy as it can be and have sound economic policy, they can win the New York governor. That won't be a Democrat. Democrats will not do anything about making America healthy because that supports RFK Jr. and therefore they hate it. It's like, it's the same thing if Donald Trump said, let's make America healthy, the Democrats would hate it and they would reject it. Same thing for RFK. RFK Jr. said, let's make America healthy, and Democrats hate him and reject it. Same thing for New York City race, New York State race, governor's race. We will see a candidate who will appear in the 2026 governor's race for New York. They will be a genuine, a real, make America healthy again candidate. They will be a real candidate with solutions for some of the economic problems facing New York. That candidate, I think, will win. I know who it is. I know someone who I believe it will be. I've talked with them. I believe they will have the solution. I think they will win. They will blow Lee Stefanik out of the water. I truly believe that. But we will see. That's something that you'll probably hear about as it comes forward. Once the announcements are made, I will make my statement about that as well, and we'll talk more about that. But no, at least Stefanik can't win. At this point, without a miracle, she can't win. But thank you for the question, John. I hope I've answered that. And again, thank you for the $10 super chat. We do appreciate the support to the channel. By the way, folks, you can ask your questions too. You don't have to you don't have to donate. You can support us and do a super chat or a Rumble rant if you wish. You don't have to. You can go to Patreon, you can go to our PayPal and help with the puppy fund if you wish. You're not required. You can just like, share, and subscribe because that helps. It helps us against the AI age verification, the restrictions and suppression from YouTube and Google. It helps us to reach more people, to have these conversations, to make our country better, and to help you know more, to be more informed about what's happening. So I hope so. John goes on to say he agrees New York State, Maha, is the hidden treasure of voters. Hey, why not? I think it is a great solution to a lot of problems in New York. If you're healthy, you can do things like you can work harder, you can work better, you can do a lot. But if you're not healthy, then nothing else really matters, right? You're going to be spending all your money on medical bills, so you'll never be able to improve your life. Again, if people disagree with me, I'm not a Democrat. If you disagree, tell me why. I'll be happy to hear your voice. That's what we do on this channel. We actually listen to you guys. Again, this is a conversation. It's not a one-way. Uh, it's not me just talking to you. It's me talking with you. And I am always open to taking questions from the chat whenever you guys have a question about any topic. It can be on anything. I've been following politics the last 20 years. I'm familiar with pretty much every topic over the last 50 years in American and international politics. Hit me with it. There's very few questions I don't have an answer about. So we'll go with that. But speaking of some of the things in the future, let's talk about Donald Trump and the Venezuelan boat. Let's talk about the cartel, the alleged cartel drug boat in the Caribbean Sea that was blown out of the water by the United States military. Now, we don't know exactly, as of this moment, we still don't know how did the boat get confronted. We don't know if a drone blew it out the water or if it was one of the guided missile, if it was one of our U.S. Navy ships. We don't know how it was destroyed. What we do know is it was blown out of the water. We know that it is stated by the United States government 11 individuals, Venezuelans, presumed to be members of the Tren de Aragua cartel, a drug and human slavery cartel. They were on the ship transporting drugs and they died. That's what we know. That's what the United States government has said. The Venezuelan government has not denied any of this. And of course, the cartel doesn't make public statements, so we have no idea what they think. So the only voice we have in this, the only opinion we can make is, well, this is what the Trump administration has said. This is what the United States military has said. There is nothing from the Venezuelan government that says the information is incorrect. So as far as I can tell, they were members of the Venezuelan drug and human trafficking cartel. That there were drugs on that ship. Those drugs inevitably would be coming into America, and they would be helping to fuel the overdose deaths in the United States, which are over 100,000 people a year. That is a national security risk. So, and also having drug cartels in our nation is in and of itself a national security risk. Also, having human trafficking in America, that's slavery. We fought a war over slavery. So anyone who continues to promote slavery in America, that's a problem. So I'm not overly upset about this boat being destroyed. Now, there is the argument, well, Mike, that breaks international law. Who cares? Let me be very clear about this, because you hear this from the left on a constant basis. Their argument is, well, Donald Trump broke international law. The United States is not ruled by the UN. The UN has no elected officers in the United States. UN law is not US law. So the left loves to say, but the UN, in all kinds of conflicts, the UN said, I don't care. No American should care what the UN says. The UN doesn't run the United States. They have no elected offices in any part of the United States, local, state, or federal. So whether the UN says this is good or bad or whatever is meaningless. It has absolutely it's not important. On top of which, the United States is part of the big seven nations in the UN. We're part of the Security Council. We can veto anything. So they can say, oh, it's a crime. The United States can just veto it, and it's non-existent. It's no longer a problem. So that's meaningless. That's just the left trying to use an authority bias to say Orange Man bad. That isn't the defining answer on, did Donald Trump do something illegal? To say the UN didn't like it is meaningless. So let's throw that argument away. That's not the question. We understand the reasoning for it, as I laid out, is to protect America. We understand drug cartels and human trafficking cartels, like the Tren de Aragua out of Venezuela, are a national security risk. Is it okay for the United States government, under any president, to use lethal force against a drug cartel? Sometimes. That's the honest answer. Sometimes. And we have seen presidents in the past use the power of the United States government to go after drug cartels as well as terrorist organizations around the world. That's a fact. And when we've seen Iraq, long before the Iraq War, long before the Afghanistan War, we had under the Obama and Clinton administrations, we had them going after people like ISIS, Al Qaeda, after Osama bin Laden. We knew that under the Clinton administration, we had Delta teams that were out in Afghanistan, had Osama bin Laden in their crosshairs. This is before 9/11. They had Osama bin Laden in their crosshairs. And Clinton said, no, let him live. That's a fact, by the way. A lot of people don't remember that, but go back into history, check it out for yourself. Delta teams did identify, did have Osama bin Laden in their crosshairs. He was a known terrorist at the time in the 1990s. I believe it was 1998. And they could have removed him. And the Clinton administration said, no, leave him alone. So, tricky history there. But it also goes to, yes, we can. Look at Obama. Obama used drones in Yemen to kill American citizens who had never been charged with a crime. And he literally wrote up a memo and made it a de facto law that a president can use a drone to bomb American citizens suspected of terrorism and kill them in foreign countries without ever having a single charge, without ever having been in a courtroom. That was the Obama administration that did that to several American citizens. So can Trump, based on the history that we have seen, where the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, many administrations have gone and taken proactive steps that they believed were correct to either eliminate or to allow to live terrorists and threats to the United States, both because of American citizens and foreigners. So that is a precedent for Donald Trump to take out that boat. So he has a valid legal reason to do it. Should he have done it? That's a tough question. I tend to say, yes, he should have done it. That it is legal on the same basis as Obama taking out terrorists in Yemen with bombs, as well as not the American citizens. The terrorists, yes. The American citizens, no. I was very much against that, still am. Terrorists, fine. American citizens, no. And very much like what we saw with Clinton. We have the right and the ability to protect our people and our borders from slavers and drug dealers that are killing our people. This is a national security threat. We do have that right. And I think the point of Trump wasn't to start a war with Venezuela, which the left wants you to think. But then again, everything that Trump does, he will hear. For the last decade, we have been told, no matter where Trump goes in the world, no matter what country he's dealing with, everything he does, they say it's going to be World War III. Oh, Trump is talking to North Korea. It's going to be World War III. Trump just took an action against Putin. That's going to be World War III. Trump didn't take an action against Putin. That's going to be World War III. Trump just pissed off the Chinese. It's going to be World War III. We've been hearing that for a decade. So throw out the fear mongering and let's actually look at the issue. And looking at what Trump did, is that going to start a war with Venezuela? The Venezuelans would love it. They would love if Trump were to attack. Why? because they will lose. There's no question on that. Everyone knows that. Venezuelans will absolutely lose, and they'll lose very quickly. They'll put up a token resistance. They will lose, and then they will use pity and empathy and the pressure from the rest of the world being upset with Donald Trump, with the Democrats and the progressives being upset with Donald Trump, saying that he's a colonizer and he's authoritarian, and they will literally they will do everything in their power to dump money into Venezuela as a compensation, as a pity, as a FU to Donald Trump. And Venezuela knows this. The best thing that could happen to Venezuela is that they get into a quick war with the United States and completely lose. They'll lose a couple of troops, they'll lose a couple of boats, maybe a couple of planes, a couple hundred troops, and the war will be over. And then the money will come pouring in from all the countries that hate Donald Trump. Europe, the EU will flood them with money. Democrats, progressives in the United States will flood Venezuela with money out of sympathy. And the politicians in Venezuela will get rich. The people will still starve. They'll still have as much crime. This government won't change, but the politicians, the crooked politicians in Venezuela that have caused their people to starve, that caused their people to leave Venezuela en masse in the millions, the same corrupt government that has provided such little health care that measles, mumps, and rubella had a 1,000% increase in South America because of Venezuela. That's true. That's from the WHO in 2018. 1,000% increase in mumps, measles, and rubella because Venezuela has screwed up their health care of their people so much. They want a war. They pray for it, but that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. We're not going to go to war with Venezuela because of a cartel. It's not going to happen. That's a fear-mongering dream of Democrats. But we may, and we kind of already have, identified narco-terrorist organizations. Trump has already said, he created the term narco-terrorism, which would be drug cartels like MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. And he said, we're going to take them out. This is something we've kind of done on a smaller scale in Mexico many times under many presidents. We've had agents come in, burn out poppy fields and burn out marijuana fields in Mexico and in other countries. We've done this a lot. So it's not unusual for the United States. It's just Trump is unpopular with Democrats. And so they don't like that he's doing it. But it's not something that Democrats haven't done in the past. So, again, I come back to, is Trump sinking the boat? Was it a crime? Not really. You can argue that. And he has a legitimate legal defense to say, no, it wasn't a crime. I know some people, including some friends of mine, will say, well, he was morally wrong. Well, that's a much more tenuous thing to hold against the president. Presidents do things that are morally gray on a regular basis. We support this war, we don't support that war. It's like the thing. Look at the morality of, there's a lot of Democrats who support Hamas. Well, that's great. Hamas is a terrorist organization, yet they support it anyway because they don't like Israel. And so that's tenuous right there. But those very same people who support Hamas saying, well, it's this group of people, they're being oppressed and they're being genocided, they say, don't care about what about in Sudan? What about the Sudanese people who are being genocided again? And it's all based on religion. And you don't hear the pro-Hamas people, the progressives, the Democrats don't care. The mainstream news media doesn't care. The civil war in Burkina Faso, which most Americans don't even know where that is in Africa. No one cares about that civil war. What about the people who are dying there? Women, what about those same people who are complaining about Hamas and saying we have to protect Hamas and the Palestinians? They don't care about the women under the Taliban in Afghanistan. They forgot about them. No one's talking about protecting those women who are being poisoned, who have been denied the ability to read and write and have a job, that get killed and tortured in Afghanistan because of the religious beliefs of the Taliban. They don't talk about that anymore. So it's to say that this is morally good or bad is a very relative statement. It's not a realistic statement to hold any government. You can't hold them to that because it's who's looking, from which frame of reference are we looking at? Well, America should be better than that. What makes us less good? We're protecting our own people. We're protecting our kids, the next generation. We're eliminating the people who are doing human slavery. We're reducing the number of people who are poisoning children through drugs. That's morally upstanding. Isn't that a good thing? Oh, but we killed 11 people. And the drugs, assuming that there are drugs, and again, once we can verify that, that may change the argument a little bit, but assuming that those were drugs on that boat, how many tens of thousands of people might have gotten fentanyl and died? So 11 people versus, let's call it 1,000. Even 1,000 people who may have died from fentanyl on that boat. 1,000 people get to live, those 11 people died. And we reduce the amount of child slavers in the world. We reduce the amount of drug dealers in the world. Isn't that worth it? Is that an equivalent exchange? In my mind, yes. For others, maybe not. But when we're going to talk about morality, we have to look at the full picture, not just a snapshot. It's not just those 11 guys in that boat. It's what were they doing? What were the consequences of letting that boat reach American soil? Well, Mike, we could have stopped the boat. We could have just sank it. We also sent a message to Tren de Aragua that if you're putting drugs into the United States, you may pay the ultimate price. Is it worth your life? Is it really worth it to do this, at least under the Trump administration? Maybe they try it again under a different president. Maybe. But under the Trump administration right now, is it worth your life to continue to pump drugs into America? Is it worth your life to continue to sell slaves in America? We just raised the bar. We just made it more difficult for them. We just made them more reluctant, we hope, to be able to continue to do that. It's a message that he sent out. It was a statement. It cost 11 lives of presumably some of the worst people in the world. Narco-terrorists, cartels. We're not talking about Santa's elves here. But I don't know. There's a lot of arguments about that. But again, I want you to look at this as I do from a bigger picture. It's not about that one boat. It's about the consequences of that boat sinking. It's about the message to the cartels. It's about American safety. It's about ending global slavery. It's about ending global drug use. Not everyone will agree with that. Not everyone will like that. But these are the choices that you have to make geopolitically. These are the big issues. And that's why not everyone's in politics. Not everyone can live with the decisions you have to make. It's like being in the military and telling that company, you have a company of men, and you say to them, go take out that machine gun nest. And you know they'll probably die. But the machine gun nest has to be taken out. You need to take out that stronghold of your enemy. And men will die, and you will order them to die to achieve that military gain. That's a difficult thing to do. It's a difficult thing to live with. Is it the right thing to do? Only you'll never know in that moment. You can only tell from the consequences. If by Trump taking out that one boat, we see a reduction in the amount of fentanyl and other drugs coming into America, if we see a reduction in the even a 10% reduction of the number of Americans who are dying because of overdoses, if we see that there is a reduction of the amount of human trafficking, slavery, child slavery, and adult slavery in America, is it worth it? I think so. But we can only know that in the future. So, I mean, that's a little bit long on that issue, but I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed. And I don't think, as far as I can tell, no one's talking about this in the country. Everyone's either saying Orange Man bad, he's an authoritarian. We're going to go to war with Venezuela. That's the argument that you're hearing in the mainstream news media. They're not talking about the rest of it. What about all the rest of that that is attached to this? And what are the consequences of this? Because I truly believe the consequence of this is all the cartels, MS-13, Tren de Agua, there's over 100 different cartels and gangs that are in America from foreign countries. They're not just from Mexico and Venezuela. They're from around the world. And every single one of them now has to consider, gee, Trump would use deadly force. If we cross the line, if we're dealing with human trafficking, if we're dealing with fentanyl and drugs, we may lose our lives. Is that worth it? Now, that may mean that they go on vacation, they hang back, cut back on some of the crimes that they're committing for a year or two, wait for the next president to come in, and then they go back to business. Could that happen? Absolutely. But maybe this changes things, and it makes it harder for them to continue, and it makes it less worthwhile for them to do this in America. That's the argument that's not being talked about in the mainstream news media. That's not being considered. You're just hearing, oh, but Orange Man bad, he committed an international crime. Screw that. That's meaningless. That's useless. That is a useless argument. That is an argument that puts a smokescreen over the whole true issue and the real consequences and the real situation we are dealing with, which is far, far bigger than 11 cartel members in a drug boat. That isn't the issue. Quite honestly, no one cares. No one will miss those 11 cartel members. No one. No one's going to remember that boat. Next week, by Monday, tomorrow, no one's going to remember that boat and those 11 people. In fact, most people have already forgotten that there were 11 people in that boat because it's meaningless. The issue is far, far bigger. They aren't consequential. The bigger issue of drugs coming into America, human trafficking in America, cartels' influence in America and around the world, that is the issue. That is the problem that needs a solution. And sometimes big, strong issues that have been left to fester require significant, strong answers, even if we don't like them. It's easy to say, I don't like that. Do you have a better answer? What's the better answer? Legalize drugs? They tried that in Oregon. It didn't work. That's not an answer. That doesn't fix the problem. Oh, allow human trafficking. We fought a war over that. We all agree. Slavery is bad. I mean, there's more slavery in the world now than in 1860s, but slavery is bad. So, and especially child slavery, like we saw in California at the corporate marijuana plant, where children were working picking marijuana, just like in 1860, there were children who were picking cotton. That's evil. We used to agree about that as a nation. Why is it different now? Oh, Orange Man bad, Donald Trump. No, it's still evil. it's still a bad thing, and we should stop it. I don't know. Maybe that's the way I look at it. Maybe I'm different. Okay. There's a couple of comments here. Um, so let me see what some of the comments are as I was going through that. So we have a comment here from Phil. Hello, Phil. Phil says there was a couple times in the 1990s. 1990s, we had several times. John McAfee said that Bin Laden cornered. We had Bin Laden cornered in Tora Bora, but they let a helicopter escape. Yeah, we could have taken out Bin Laden a couple of times in the 1990s. We could have resolved it, but we didn't. Let's see. Got a comment here from John again. I'm surprised nobody is joking about all the cocaine sharks out there now. Watch out. Hollywood they might do a movie about that. I mean, we had the whole Sharknado series of films. So why not another Sharknado with cocaine infused, cocaine addicted sharks? I don't know. What would you call that? Cocaine Coca shark? Shark name? I don't know what you call it. Cocaine sharks. You'd call it cocaine sharks. They watch out. Hollywood will make a movie about this. Cocaine infused sharks. Kind of like a cocaine bear. There's that movie, Cocaine Bear, where a bear gets addicted to cocaine and goes on a rampage. Well, watch. Someone will make a low budget film, and maybe I'm giving them inspiration now. Call it Cocaine Shark. That's it. Cocaine Shark. And it's about a bunch of sharks, maybe picked up in a hurricane, dropped off in Florida or somewhere in somebody's pool, and they're high on cocaine and they just jump around killing people. I mean, you'll probably see it. It'll be a movie. All right. Let's see. Phil goes on to say, what do you think happened to the USS Maine? Was it like the Gulf of Tonkin? I trust Trump. I don't trust the Office of Naval Intelligence. Look, we are at an almost all-time low of trust of the United States citizens in our government, and with good reason. Democrats really screwed up with Biden because he was a zombie part-time president. And so a lot of people don't trust him. We've gone through several presidents, and this started to an extent with the death of JFK. This in part had to do with Nixon and his impeachment. We've been losing trust in our government for good reason. And then Biden really put that into overdrive. The fact that he couldn't speak, he didn't know what he was doing. We were lied to on a regular basis that day one, when Biden walked in, he was suffering very likely from senility, and it was hidden from the public at every turn. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't have a lot of trust in our government right now. And I don't know. Do I trust everything my government says? No. Trust but verify. That's the Reagan statement. And that's why I go through these issues with you guys, because I'm not telling you the approved message from the GOP or from the mainstream news media or from the Democrats or the Libertarians or the Conservatives. I'm telling you my take on it based on 20 years of doing what I do. And I don't just look at one article or one side of an issue. Again, I listen to the left. I listen to their shows and their arguments and their articles. I listen to international news and how they interpret some of the things that are happening in the world. And I listen to the American news media. I go to the original sources and listen to their speeches and the bills that are being put out there to come up with my understanding. And I remember the things that we have been doing for decades and put that all in place. Now, does that mean that I understand it all? Absolutely not. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But I'm giving you another perspective, another way to think about this to get an understanding so that you can make a decision for yourself based on your experience and your understanding and your preferences. Because at the end of the day, you have to decide for yourself what you believe. You can blindly accept whatever the media says, or you can look into it. Doesn't mean you have to agree with me. And I know some people don't, and that's okay. But we should never blindly just believe our government. Governments lie. Every government lies. Every politician lies to varying degrees. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not. We have to take it case by case. So I do see you guys are talking amongst yourselves. Uh, Phil likes my. It seems Phil likes my comment. Cocaine Shark. They had a movie Cocaine Bear. I know. I love that. What is it you say here? Phil says it's based on a true story. If you say so, Cocaine Bear is based on a true story. Really? What is this? Phil, you're losing your mind here. Heroin sharks, they nod off. Really? Really? You're out of your mind, Phil. It's so crazy. Okay. So I wanted to cover that. And again, it's a different way of looking at it. And again, I think that when we balance out the positives versus the negatives, the things that benefits to the United States short term and potentially long term versus the argument from the left and the international argument. The international argument is Orange Man bad. That's not a reason. That's not a problem. And the argument, ooh, it wasn't very moral. That's a frame of reference. That's not an answer. That's not a reason not to do it. Could we have captured the ship? Maybe. And probably any other ships that are taken now will likely be taken without ever having to fire a single shot. Why? Because the last ship got blown out of the water. Because we made a statement already. So any future interactions with the cartels, they're going to be a lot more calm. We're less likely to have a conflict, shooting war with them, because they get blown out of the water. They can't compete. And they're less likely to do this, I think. But again, everyone has a different opinion about that. We'll see. Yes, Phil, I know that the last comment was a joke. I know. Drug dealers like the ones in Mena, Arkansas, threw some cocaine out of a plane during a storm and the bear got into the cocaine. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. So, since we're talking about the international aspects of the Trump administration, there's, of course, what happened in Georgia just the other day. The ICE went into southern Georgia, into a Hyundai factory, LG Energy and Hyundai conglomerate there, a factory, and they arrested 475 people. There's 1,200 workers at the plant, and they arrested 475. We're talking about a third of the entire plant got arrested because they're illegal aliens. Allegedly, they're all illegal aliens. That's huge. That tells you how big the problem is. And you can't tell me there are 475 illegal aliens working at a plant in southern Georgia and the town didn't know it. That the local government didn't know they had 475 illegal aliens working at that one plant. You're kidding me, right? That's a lie. Anyone tells you, well, we didn't know, you're liars. Of course you knew. You absolutely knew. You didn't care. Because, the plant was working, money was coming into the town, politicians were getting donations, so they didn't care. But the law was being broken. And that does matter. And those are 475 jobs that could have gone to American citizens. So the Democrats love to say, well, those jobs that the illegal aliens do, no one wants to pick cotton. No one wants to pick marijuana. We need these illegal aliens because they'll do the job no one wants. People do want to work at car factories. That's a fact. I mean, look at Detroit, look at Chicago. We have a massive auto industry in America. People do work at factories on a regular basis, and they do get paid well for that. And those are factory union jobs that could have been held by Americans, 475 of them in southern Georgia, and they went to illegal aliens instead. I understand why Hyundai did it. They're cheaper. It's cheaper to get their people from South Korea, put them in America, pay them less than what it costs for American workers in American unions, and get them to do the same job. So I understand why they did it. It was cheap. But it's illegal, and it's bad for the U.S. economy. So I'm glad Trump went in. And this is the kind of thing that is being protected. When we see these complaints about ICE going in and, oh, we got to stop ICE. We need the illegal aliens. No, we don't. They're going to take away, well, no one wants to work on a farm. Hyundai isn't a farm. It's not. It's a factory. So this argument that it's only about farms and it's about migrant workers in fields, that's a lie. And the Democrats know this. But it's the only way they can make this. They're trying to sell you an image. They're trying to sell you an idea to make you comply, to manipulate you emotionally so that you will agree with them and they get to maintain power because they're getting donations. Just like in South Georgia, that local town, that local government were getting paid off directly and indirectly, I would say. They're getting paid off for those 475 illegal aliens working at the Hyundai plant. So we went in and ICE correctly, legally, arrested all the illegal aliens. And they're deporting them. And just like we should expect, these aren't criminals. These are regular good people, apparently. None of them were checked on. We don't know if any of them were inoculated. We don't know if they had mumps, measles, or rubella. We don't know if they ever got the jab because they're illegal aliens. They don't have medical records to check. So they could have come here with God knows what kind of disease and been spreading it across America because the illegal aliens do that. Whether it's popular to mention it or not is immaterial. So they could have been spreading diseases. We have no idea. But these illegal aliens, they were rounded up. And because they're presumably good people, that's why they were working at the Hyundai plant, when Hyundai is a South Korean company. The government of South Korea said, well, 300 of those, out of those 475 people, 300 are actually, they are South Korean citizens. We want them back. They want to repatriate them. No problem. Do we need to send them to Alligator Alcatraz? No. Why? South Korea said, we'll take them, put them on a plane, we'll take those people back. No need to use an Alligator Alcatraz. No need to send them to El Salvador or to Antarctica. We can just give them back to South. I'm perfectly fine with that. That's great. South Korea gets its people back. We have less of a problem. There's now 475 job openings in South Georgia for good paying factory jobs. I'm a happy man. You should be happy too. The people in Georgia should be happy. The state of Georgia just got more revenue and Americans got employed and Americans got a good paying job and they'll be able to maybe make it to the middle class, maybe even above. The unions are probably very happy because they may be able to get a union into Hyundai, and that means they have more members, they'll make more revenues, and they'll be able to donate to Democrats. Democrats will be happy because more unions mean more donations to their campaigns so they can get elected again. This is a good thing for America. Democrats have to love this. Why are they being silent? Because they have to pretend like this is a bad thing. Like Trump is being evil. He's such a warmonger. He's such an authoritarian. Orange man, bad. How is this bad? Oh, I know. But Mike, MSNBC didn't say this. CNN, ABC News, the New York Times, they're not saying that this is good for Americans in Georgia. It's good for the Georgian economy. It's good for the American economy. No one ever mentioned that. How do you know? Those are jobs in America. Somebody has to do that job. Those illegal aliens are gone. That factory still has to have workers. Who's left? People in Georgia, American citizens in Georgia will have to be hired. Oh, yeah, Hyundai has to pay more money. Oops. Well, that's their problem. They don't want to follow, they were hiring illegals because they were trying to escape from paying American citizens what they should be. Well, all the more reason get rid of the illegal aliens and make Hyundai pay the proper price. They were abusing illegal aliens. They were paying them less money, which means less tax revenue, more of a burden on that town, the state of Georgia, and the American people. There was more of a burden because those illegal aliens weren't paying taxes. So that's a bigger burden on America. Now we have more people paying more taxes to get more services. This is a good thing. This is good for our economy. It's good for reducing the amount of taxes and the burden on people. This is more fair. It's less abuse for all the people who go, well, illegal aliens, there's no such thing. Well, then call it human rights abuse. Hyundai was abusing South Korean people. Now they're no longer abusing South Korean people. Isn't that a good thing? The South Koreans get to go back home to their country. So no harm, no foul for them. Americans get to have the jobs. Everyone's happy. Oh, but the left isn't happy, are they? The left is upset. And I have to ask you, what are they upset about? I know, they didn't tell you the benefits of all of these illegal aliens being rounded up and shipped out. They don't want to tell you any of the benefits. They're only telling you the doom and gloom. This is bad. Now, South Korea is going to be in conflict with the United States. The United States is not going to go to war, and we're not going to have a trade war over 300 illegal aliens in an American factory. If you think that, you have no understanding of economics. Macroeconomics, geopolitics, you have no understanding of it. Yes, the South Korean government will save face. They have to look good. It's embarrassing to the government of South Korea and to Hyundai, the corporation. It's embarrassing to them to be caught with illegal aliens. But that is a minor issue. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of business between the United States and South Korea. Who cares? 300 people are meaningless. There's a bigger issue being dealt with here. And this is part of a puzzle. So the news media wants to tell you, oh, this is so bad for American politics. It's bad for America and South Korea. No, it's not. No, it's not. This is not. Those 300 illegal aliens are not going to decide whether or not South Korea gets to have nuclear weapons or that the United States reconfirms and recommits to supporting South Korea and protecting it from North Korea and China. Those 300 illegal aliens have nothing to do with that. Nothing in the universe to do with that. And anyone who suggests that they do has no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea what's going on in geopolitics. No. They just don't want to tell you the good parts of this because that makes Donald Trump and the Trump administration and his policies on illegal immigration makes them look good. It shows the benefit of why he's doing what the American people elected Donald Trump to do. We wanted the mass deportations because American people, like those in South Georgia, knew that jobs, not just farm jobs, but farm jobs in factories, jobs across this country that they do want, that do have good pay, they can't get them because illegal aliens have them. And that's why we elected Donald Trump, because the Democrats didn't care. Democrats just turned a blind eye and didn't care. Donald Trump actually did something about it. And that's helping American people. And the media won't tell you that this is a good thing, because then you might vote Republican. And they don't want you to vote Republican. They never want you to vote Republican. So that's the thing. There is a positive here. And this is the thing that's not being talked about. And I was looking into all the news, and everyone's talking about how bad this is and how this is going to cause a problem, and how this is an issue with South Korea. None of them talked about any of the positives for America, how this is protecting the rights of these human beings, that they were being treated as second-class citizens, and that's now ended. That Americans now have the opportunity to have jobs and to uplift people out of poverty. No one wants to talk about that. Reducing the tax burden on entire communities, not being talked about. Why not? Isn't that part of the equation? Isn't that part of the whole solution? If we're looking at, is this worth it? Is mass deportations actually effective? Then we have to look at all the consequences, the good and the bad, and then make a decision. And yet the news media will only tell you half the story, all of the bad parts of the story. They will demonize everyone. They will eliminate, ignore any of the positives because they have a political agenda. They want Democrats to win. They want you to vote for Democrats and progressives. They'll lie to your face. And not telling you about the positives is lying to your face. Again, you still may not like this. You may not like the positives. You may not think the positive, the Americans getting jobs, the South Koreans being treated as human beings, not second-class citizens. You may not like that equation. You may not think it's worth it. That's your choice. But at least now you know what the equation is. At least now you have an understanding of what the benefits and the negatives are. So you can now make a decision. And you can actually say, well, I want to see more mass deportations like this. Or you can say, no, I don't. And I would tell you, I think we should do more. This is an example, and we've seen this in many states across this nation, many of the sanctuary states, many of the sanctuary cities. We have seen this same scenario play out over and over and over again, as we have known it's been happening for decades now. People just don't like saying it. They just don't like that Donald Trump's doing. And maybe, and I know there's some polling from CBS that says people are upset with the way Donald Trump does these things. Not so much that he's doing what he's doing, or they're not upset with the consequences of what he's doing. They're upset with the way he does it. They don't like the way he says it. I don't care about that. And I know I have a lot of friends in political commentary, and they're like, well, it's about the emotion, Mike. It's about the feeling. And call it one of my failings, my critical flaw. I don't care. I don't care how people feel. I care about the consequences. I care about the net result. I care about the bottom line. I don't care about you don't have to like it. I don't care if you like it. It is the best choice. It is the best situation. Again, people disagree with me. Tell me why. Phil has another comment. Phil says, the refugees from Venezuela have been destabilizing Latin America. Maduro has tried to annex part of Guyana, too. Yeah, there's a lot of conflict with Guyana and Venezuela. The Maduro government is absolutely corrupt and have been harming their own people for a long time. And like I said, you can double check with the World Health Organization, the WHO. In 2018, they published reports stating that the amount of measles, mumps, and rubella have increased by 1,000%, and the cause, the center of that increase in South America was Venezuela. Those Venezuelans didn't just go to all the South American countries like Brazil and Chile and the others. They also went on caravans and entered into the United States. Part of the reason why mumps and measles are on an uptick in the United States isn't because there aren't as many Americans who have the vaccinations. That's not the case. because we virtually wiped that out. That wasn't the problem. It's the problem that we have people who've never been vaccinated because their countries, second and third world nations, don't have proper health care, don't have proper vaccinations. We have these individuals entering our country without anyone checking their background, checking their medical history. They're coming in with these diseases. They're getting into our communities and our kids are suffering. That's why. Once the measles doesn't just appear out of nowhere and suddenly just affect people, it's not like rain falling from the sky and suddenly, oh look, there's an outbreak. No, that doesn't happen. And it hasn't happened for decades. What has happened? We had a migrant chain of 8 million migrants, many of them coming from one of the biggest epicenters of measles, mumps, and rubella in the South America and in North America. And their caravans were coming into America for years. And now we see some of the consequences of that, which is more incidences of diseases that in the first world nation, in the United States, non-existent. Non-existent. Wasn't a problem. We had what, 10 cases in a year? And now we have 30 cases, 50 cases in a year, which is still minuscule. It's barely worth even thinking about. It's not really relevant. We have 350 million people in this nation. We have over 40 million children in this nation. 50 kids, 100 cases. It's meaningless. I mean, if it's your kid, it's obviously going to affect you and you're going to feel a certain way about it. But in terms of the nation, it doesn't matter. It's meaningless. But what is meaningful is where's it coming from? It's not coming from America affecting other Americans. It's coming from outside of America, and it's being brought in by illegal aliens. Yet again, why do countries have borders? Why do countries have rules about legally entering that nation? Healthcare. That's yet another factor in this, which is another reason why we need to shut down the border and stop the illegal immigrations, which we have largely done under the Trump administration. We've reduced the number of illegal aliens entering into America by 93%. It's working, folks. It is working. Let's see. Phil says, Phil, you are so talkative today. By the way, folks, everyone is welcome to talk. It's not just Phil and not just John, but everyone is welcome to talk. You don't have to make a donation. You don't have to do a super chat or a Rumble rant. You too can just type on in and say, Mike, I agree, I disagree. Let's talk about this. Please do. Phil says, Donald Trump won 2 safe Democratic districts in the city of Chicago. That's true. He did. Which is like a first. It's like never. Republicans haven't won in the 2 districts, which were majority black districts in Chicago. This was done without the Illinois GOP. That was a grassroots level Republicans, black women in Chicago that helped Donald Trump win those 2 districts. It's amazing in Chicago politics. It's remarkable. In part because of the immigration problem, which was ignored by many, both Lori Lightfoot and also, Brandon Johnson ignored the illegal immigration issue and put Chicago into debt. Their infrastructure was broken, very much like New York City. We're spending so much money on illegal aliens, there was no money left over to help the people that these elected officials are actually sworn to help and protect. That's true. New gangs and the city going into massive debt for foreigners. That's true. All absolutely true, Phil. Absolutely true. Every word. That is part of the reason why Donald Trump won. And that's part of the reason why the politicians are upset about Trump saying he's going to help enforce the law, which is what the executive branch is supposed to do, enforce the existing law. And there's a lot of people, the majority of people that would appear in Chicago, not upset about that. And I know Some people say, well, here's a poll, and yeah, who did you ask? See, the problem with many of these polls, who did you ask? How many people did you ask, and who specifically did you ask? Did you ask a bunch of Democrats? Did you go to a college and ask a bunch of college students? Well, gee, you might get a kind of skewed answer. How about you go into the middle of the city and ask people there? You might get a very different answer. So it's you got to be very careful about the polling. But it seems, and we do know, like in Minnesota, excuse me, Minneapolis, we do know that there have been several polls of the people where they're asked directly, and they've gone into the black communities in Minneapolis and said, do you want more or less police? And in Minneapolis, they will tell you they wanted the same or more police, not to defund the police. Even as the politicians were saying, defund the police, the people were saying, no, 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 keep the police as they are. In fact, hire a few more people. When Brandon Johnson was asked by Morning Joe on MSNBC, Morning Joe was having an interview with Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago, and 3 times Johnson was asked a very simple question. If you had 5,000 more police officers, would that help reduce crime in Chicago? It's a very simple question. Now, Brandon Johnson answered everything else in the universe except, will 5,000 more police officers help to reduce the amount of crime in Chicago? If you ask the people in Chicago, they will tell you whether they like the police or they don't like the police. They will tell you the answer is yes, it will reduce the amount of crime in Chicago. That's a fact. But Brandon Johnson, well, that's Trump. That's Republican. That's their principles, not progressive. So the answer is no, no, we can't talk about that. He can't honestly say, no, it won't help because he'd be lying. So rather than lie to the public, obviously, and be called out for it, his answer is, well, it's a bigger issue than that. No, it's really not. It's about housing, and yeah, you can do all that other stuff too. Would having 5,000 police officers help reduce crime? It's a yes or a no. And the answer is obviously yes. But he doesn't want to talk about it. And that's why there's so much crime in Chicago. Because he won't talk about the truth. He won't deal with the facts as they exist. Instead, he's going to play games. And that's why people are suffering. That's why Trump is saying we have to put in federal forces. I would prefer FBI, DEA, the Treasury, going into Chicago and trying to clean that up. And that means clean out some of the politicians who are corrupt. I agree with Kit Cabello of Hardlands Media. We need to get rid of some of those entrenched politicians in Chicago because they are corrupt and they're not looking out for the people in Chicago. And that's the root, one of the root problems, not all of it, but one of the root problems with crime in Chicago. And same thing can be said in New York, Baltimore, Detroit, LA, Seattle, Portland, Austin, New York City, Boston. Yeah, you can say the same thing in many of these cities. All right, let's see here. Wow, Phil. Phil has a lot of questions today. Okay. Do you think there's a way for police to work with modern guardian angels who just do volunteer patrols and reporting? Well, the guardian angels have always done volunteer patrols. They don't get paid for that. They've always been a voluntary organization, and they do serve a positive benefit to protect people in New York City. We really haven't seen that in any other city. The closest analogy would be probably the Black Panthers at the very beginning of the Black Panther movement in the 1960s, before they became more radical and more political. When they were there just helping communities, the Black Panthers were probably the most effective. And that's probably the most similar thing to the Guardian Angels. And actually, they were about the same time frame. You had the Black Panthers in the early to mid 60s. You had the Guardian Angels in the 80s. very next generation. So there you go. Um, could the police work with them? The police do work with them. They already do. And they can continue to work with them. The guardian angels don't replace the police, but they are something that when there's no police around, there very often are guardian angels around. And they have been. They're not there based on the whims of politicians. Like Kathy Hochul put in an extra 750 state troopers and National Guard in New York City. By the way, people who are like, oh, we can't have National Guard in cities. Kathy Hochul put 750 National Guard troops in New York City subways. So you're not, people who are like, you can't have National Guard in our cities. We already do. That's not a legitimate argument. We already do. Now they're being controlled by the governor, but that's still military in our cities. So to say you can't put National Guard troops in our cities, we already do that across the country. That is already happening. The question is who's in control of those troops? That's the real argument that Democrats don't want anyone to think about. Kathy Hochul put them in. Well, Democrats control that. Well, okay. And Trump's in charge. What's the difference? Oh, but because Orange Man bad. That's where their real problem is. Okay. So, yeah, to answer your question, the guardian angels, they already do work with the police. They have since the beginning. Well, actually, the first 10 years, not as much. They were seen as being more, the police didn't appreciate the guardian angels, and they still, to an extent, don't. But over the decades, we've gotten used to them. The New York City police have gotten used to them and recognize that they do a pretty decent job overall. And it's a supplement, it's a benefit to the police and to the public. It helps to give the impression of safety, and it does help to put less crime. It does help reduce crime because there's more people willing to defend themselves. Therefore, less criminals will want to be engaged in crime. So it does help. Okay, we got another one. The show of force, just having a guy standing in a corner watching seems to help. It does. It does. Criminals don't like to attack people who are paying attention and who are willing to defend themselves, or that there's someone else willing to jump in and defend someone if they try and commit a crime. It lowers their chance of being successful, and it's also something that it gives them more problems. Criminals want the easiest way, they want to get their money the easiest way they can. So if they can grab someone's purse or wallet and run away, that's easier than having to fight one or two or three people, possibly be delayed, have to run away from police officers to get that same wallet or purse. If they can get it with no one fighting, they want to do it. That's the easiest crime. If the more struggle they have to have, the more chances they have of being caught, the less likely they're willing to do it. So yeah, it's true. A guy in the UK hired club security to help reduce crime just by having a show of force. Well, yeah, and a lot of places do that. That's why a lot of places have bouncers. Bouncers aren't really there to stop fights. They're there to intimidate people into not starting a fight. That's the best prevention. Knowing that there's a bunch of bouncers and they will bounce you out of the place is more about preventing you from fighting rather than actually having you fight or stopping you from fighting while you're fighting. It's about that prevention. And the same thing in that same mindset, again, blowing up the Venezuelan cartel boat is that show of force. We're not going to war against Venezuela. We might go to war against the narco-terrorist gangs like MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. And I think that would be fine. But it's the show of force. We're willing to blow their boats out of the water, and they can't do a damn thing about it. That makes a statement. And I guarantee you, the gang leaders, the cartel leaders, are rethinking maybe we should slow down our routes. Maybe we should slow down the amount of drugs and human trafficking that we're doing. Maybe we should slow it down for a while, lay low for a while, commit less crimes for a while, because obviously Trump's willing to take them out. So why deal with all that heat, have all that trouble? That's essentially the same principle that Trump is using as the bouncer in a club. It's just bigger scale. It's a bigger scale, but it's the same principle. Not everyone will like that, but it's the truth. Okay, so we talked again and again about the Venezuela boat. We talked a little bit about the Hyundai illegals. And, I think people will be surprised about both of those because no one's talked to you probably about it in the way that I have. We've been talking about Chicago and a little bit about Portland. And yes, the rumor is that Trump will be going into Portland as well as into Chicago. And I think that's a great thing. That is a good thing. Because Antifa has their number one stronghold is in Portland. And we know that from the riots, the 120 days of rioting that they've done in Portland. We know that Antifa members were in Seattle and they killed someone right next to Portland. We know that that's their stronghold. And from there, we see it spread to the rest of the country. And putting a little fear of God into Antifa is a good thing. That is a homegrown group of terrorists. And anything that helps to stop them from continuing to spread their terror, their leftist terror, is a good thing. So I'm happy about that. And Portland needs the stability. They honestly do. People say, but Mike, it's not that bad. Yeah, it is. It is that bad. People have died. It's destroying these states, these cities. It is that bad. Okay, let me see. I mentioned Cabela's on Jimmy Dore. By the way, did everyone hear last week? I forgot to mention it in last week's show. The left were telling you that Donald Trump is dead. Again, it's just another example. They are doing everything they can. They put out these fake messages. It's a hoax. Last week they were telling you Donald Trump's dead. Why? He didn't have as many press conferences as he's been having. Do you know how many press conferences Joe Biden had? Donald Trump has done more press conferences in 7 months than Obama did in 4 years. But suddenly he misses 1 or 2 press conferences, and they're like, he's dead, he's dead. No. He's keeping a pace that we have seen. Donald Trump at 74 has had a more active pace and has been more involved with government policies and instituting policies and enforcing the law than most presidents in their 50s. And he's been more effective than those presidents. And the fact that a 74-year-old will occasionally take a break, and I'm not talking like Joe Biden every weekend was taking a 3-day weekend, even though he was a part-time zombie president and wasn't doing 18 hours a day. We had no idea who was running America. And every weekend, it was 3 days for Joe Biden in Maryland. He was constantly off the job. And Trump is there occasionally taking a break. Guess what? Not a big deal. The comparison is night and day. Night and day. But again, the left needs to fearmonger. They need to scare people. They have nothing else to offer except fear. And anyone on the left who's watching the show, and they're like, Mike, I hate this guy. I don't like that. How could you say that? You don't have an answer that counters what I'm saying. There is no counter argument. Democrats aren't offering anything else. It is verifiable, and we have seen this consistently for the last decade at least. Democrats are living and thriving, and their political successes have all come from fear. They're not offering anything. And that's why they have failed. Okay. So yeah, Trump, they told us he was dead. They lied. Again, that was a lie. Um, and by the way, did you hear, since we were talking about Chicago, the Chicago Mexican Day Parade got canceled. I think it's funny. I think it's funny. Look, if you're Mexican American, go to your parade. Puerto Rican Day Parade, the West Caribbean Day Parade. I don't care where you're from. You want a Polish parade, go and have a parade. Knock yourself out. You're an American citizen. Why not? You love your ancestors. Fantastic. You have pride about where your family came from. Okay, I respect that. Knock yourself out. You're still an American citizen, but you want to respect where you came from. Fantastic. I got no problem with that. And if you don't, I have no problem with that. You don't have to run around screaming, my ancestors came from Uganda. I don't care. Are you an American citizen? Yes. Okay, I don't care where you came from. I don't care where your great grandfather came from. I don't care. Not really important to me. Are you an American citizen? Yes. Okay, great. I don't care. So, but if you want to celebrate that, fantastic. You want to keep some of those traditions in your family alive amongst your friends, fantastic. Have a parade. Why aren't Mexican Americans coming out for a parade in Chicago? That's the question people should ask, which the news media won't. They'll say, oh my God, they're not going to go out because they think they're going to have. They were afraid that Donald Trump would try and arrest everyone. If you're American citizens, how can he arrest you? If you have ID, valid, real ID, say, hey, I'm an American citizen. How can he arrest you? It's not going to detain you. You're an American citizen. Oh, but they knew that Chicago is so infested with illegal aliens that if they had a Mexican Day parade like they were planning to, like they have done in the past, and government leaders knew this, that this was going to be overwhelmingly illegal aliens. And rather than do something about the overwhelming presence of illegal aliens, they just ignored it. That's why it got canceled. Because almost everyone, well, the majority of people that would go to the parade weren't American citizens. If they were American citizens, go and have your parade. No one's going to stop you. Who cares? Well, are you an American citizen? Yes, here. Got my ID. Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Have your parade. Well, do you have an ID? No, I don't. Well, you're a legal alien? Yes. Okay, well, you got to get deported. Oh my God. Yeah. That's the problem. Well, guess what? I don't feel bad that there isn't a Mexican Day parade in Chicago because they're afraid of mass deportations. Good. Leave the country. Because you're obviously not an American citizen. So leave. Get out. You want to come to America as a legal immigrant? Fantastic. I'm happy to have you. No problem. If you want to come here because you're a refugee and you have a legitimate refugee status, fantastic. You need asylum because you have a legitimate asylum status. Fantastic. Welcome. Come into America. Happy to have you. You're an illegal alien. Get out my country. It's just that simple. And that means that we don't get to have a Caribbean Day parade or an Africa Day or a Mexican Day parade. I'm not going to cry. It's not a problem. Get out my country. By the way, how many America Day parades are there in Mexico? How many America Day parades are there in Peru or Chile? How many America Day parades are there in Germany, France? How many America Day parades are there in Africa, Southeast Asia? How many America Day parades? How many American citizens that are living in those, even in Haiti? Even in Haiti, there's 40,000 Americans who live in Haiti, or at least there were before the gangs took over the government in Haiti. 40,000 Americans. How many American Day parades are in Haiti every year? Oh, there aren't any. They don't do that. Oh, you can't have an American Day parade in a foreign country. If you're Americans living in another country, you can't get together with other Americans and go, hey, we're Americans, we're waving our flag. You can't go out on the July 4th and have a parade in a foreign country celebrating America. They won't let you do that. But you can do it here in America, especially if you're an illegal alien. Try that in another country. Try on July 4th being a legal alien in any of these countries flying an American flag on July 4th. They will deport your ass as fast as lightning strikes. Let's stop pretending that the world is some socialist utopia, that the rules are only different because of Donald Trump. It's such a misreading of the reality. It's just not, it's so absurd. It really is. Oh, I did want to mention, I'm going to talk about RFK in just a moment and what happened with RFK and Senator Warren, some of the other issues there in just a moment. But I did want to mention, it looks like I'm going to be kicked off of TikTok shortly. I'm actually surprised. I expected that they would kick me off of TikTok a hell of a lot sooner than this. But right now, my TikTok account is under review. And in particular, because I showed a video, which is on my YouTube account, it's on my Rumble account, it's on my Instagram account, and on Facebook, which is a conversation between RFK Jr., part of the conversation between, or question and answer, between RFK Jr. and Senator Elizabeth Warren. And I show in that short part of their conversation. So you get to see Elizabeth Warren and part of the video, unedited, them talking. And then I make a commentary about what I just showed, their actual on the Senate floor comment. TikTok said that breaks their community rules. Showing a senator talking to the Secretary of Health and Human Services and making a political comment about it in America is somehow breaking the terms of service of TikTok. That is stupid. That is stupid. Again, they have an agenda. So, in speaking about that, so that's why TikTok, if you're wondering, why haven't I been on TikTok? If you watch TikTok and you see our shorts there, that's why. Because they currently have me under review. They're considering whether they want to delete my channel because I dared to show the public a conversation and make comment on it. Now, in terms of that comment itself, let's have a conversation. RFK Jr., yeah, RFK Jr., Democrats hate RFK Jr. I mean, they hate him bad. They hate that man. And they hate RFK Jr. because he's not a Democrat. Now, mind you, RFK Jr. he's virtually a progressive in his ideology. If you look at his 2024 campaign, he's into isolationism. He's up and down the line. He's everything that the Democrats say they support. Overwhelmingly, massively. But because RFK Jr. said, let me debate with Joe Biden, let the rank and file voters in the Democratic Party actually have a primary, and let them choose either Joe Biden or RFK Jr. And the Democrats said, no, you can't do that. Because they don't believe in freedom. They don't believe in democracy. They said, we picked Joe Biden, so it's Joe Biden. Shut up. Shut up, wait your time, stop talking. RFK Jr. said, no, I have MAHA. I have this big issue, MAHA. I want to make America healthy. I think it's an important thing. They said, stop talking about that. We don't want to make America healthy. We have an entirely different plan. And that makes the Democrats look bad based on their policies for the lockdown and the jab. So they didn't want to talk about that. So they kicked RFK Jr. out. RFK Jr. ran. RFK Jr. was doing well, at one point up to 19%. And so Democrats got embarrassed. They were very angry, and they declared that RFK Jr. is a traitor. Since that moment that RFK Jr. went independent and ran for the 2024 presidency, he has been branded a traitor, and Democrats hate him. Possibly they hate RFK Jr. more than they hate Orange Man Bad Donald Trump. Literally, depending on where you go, the Democrats are angrier at RFK Jr. than they are Donald Trump, believe it or not. So there's nothing that RFK Jr. can do that will ever be good, that they will ever support. Nothing. There's nothing. Think about it. RFK Jr., his main thing under the Trump administration has been make America healthy again. How can anyone be upset about that? How can you be upset that children will be healthier because of the CDC? How can you be angry about that? How can you fight against that? And yet Democrats are. And their big thing is, and their big example of this is, oh my God, you're stopping people from getting the jab, which is a factual, empirical lie. It's a lie. RFK Jr. hasn't stopped anyone from getting the jab. He stopped mandating. He stopped people being forced by the government. And Democrats love using the power of the government to force people to do things that Democrats want. They love that. They want people to comply, not to choose. They don't want people to have a choice. It's like 2024 in the primary. They didn't want to give people a choice. They wanted them to comply. They pick Joe Biden, you vote Joe Biden. If they pick Kamala Harris, you vote Kamala Harris. That's what the Democrats want. They don't want you to choose. You're not supposed to have freedom. You're not supposed to think about things. You're supposed to obey. And here is, so when RFK Jr. says the jab is untested, that is true. That is a fact. It is empirical. It's scientific. There is no question about that. The normal process for a drug to be approved for human use, 7 years. On the fast track, if they fast track it, a drug like the drugs for AIDS victims took 7 years. 7 years before it was approved for human usage. And that's something that was killing people en masse, and there was a lot of mystery behind it, and there was a lot of public outcry for doing something, finding some kind of solution. People were terrified. I was alive during the 80s. I remember the epidemic of AIDS. I remember it very well. People were terrified. And it took 7 years to get drugs to allow people to live with AIDS. That's a fact. And that's because it had to be tested for use by human beings. That's the process. So the jab didn't even get 1 year, not even 1 year of testing. We had no testing whatsoever. The drug was made, people started getting injected in the same year. Within the same year of the drug being created, the medicine being created, and within the same year, people were being stuck with that across the world, across the United States. We were the public guinea pigs. We were the trial. It was a live experiment. That is a fact. We don't know the efficacy. That takes 10 to 15 years to figure out. We don't know what the full set of side effects are or the severity of the side effects. That takes 10 to 15 years to figure out. So we don't know whether this has been successful or not. You should Now, you hear Democrats say, but you should do it anyway. Do it anyway because they said so. You should have the right to choose that. It's your, as Democrats like to say, it's your body, your choice. Why must I put something that no one can answer? No one can tell you, what will this do to you in 20 years? You have no idea. No one does. No one has any idea what the consequences will be in 20 years. If I put this into a kid today, will that have an impact when they become an adult? We don't know. Will that affect something in their life? Will they get allergies? Will there be severe allergies? We don't know. So you should have a right as a parent to decide whether your kid is going to get this unknown, untested medication in their body, especially if you're going to put it in their body repeatedly, because we don't know what is the impact of having these shots on a regular basis. We have no idea. We don't know. That is the scientific fact. It's not presented like that because Democrats want you to comply, because they want you afraid. Aren't you afraid of the big bad bug? Of course you are. So since you're afraid, you're going to comply. Go get that medication, which is great for the pharmaceutical companies to pay Democrats a lot of money as donors. It's good for Democrats. It helps get them more money, gets them more power. Is it good for you? Who knows? Quite honestly, who knows? I know what they say it should do, but what they say it should do has changed just in the last 3 years. We were told a bunch of things that these jabs will do. And the story they told us at first isn't the story that they tell us today. Is the answer we're getting today, is that the truth? Maybe. But I don't know. And you don't know. And you won't know until the studies are done, which takes 10 to 15 years. That's the truth. That's how science works. That's how medical drugs normally get approved for human use. That's the FDA process. And I know that because as a stockbroker, I followed the FDA process on pharmaceutical drugs being put out to the public many, many times. Amylin Pharmaceuticals, I've talked about that. My time investing with Amylin Pharmaceuticals and my clients and their money and their drugs and what happened in that process. I've talked about it many times. So yeah, I'm familiar with this process. So to tell me, but Mike, you don't understand. Yes, I do. I don't agree. There's a difference. I understand. I don't agree. So just because a non-doctor like Elizabeth Warren says you should comply doesn't mean I should comply. Just because someone like Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, says you should comply doesn't mean I should comply. Doesn't mean that they have my personal best interest or the best interest of kids in my family or anyone in my family. They don't have our best interests at heart. And they don't know anything more than I know. They don't. Matter of fact, I probably know more about the side effects and the consequences of the jab than Kathy Hochul or Elizabeth Warren, because they don't spend, I doubt that they spend as much time reading various medical papers from WHO, the CDC, several different universities all around the world. They have a team that will read the summary and say, it works. And that's what Elizabeth Warren will go out and say, but it works. No, it doesn't. Or at least not necessarily the way you think it does. They said, Elizabeth Warren was saying, but what about the children? They love to say, what about the children? Do you remember, and please go back and double check this for yourself, the British government, we now have the leaked conversations amongst the cabinet of the British government in 2020, 21, 2022. And we know for a fact that the British government was aware that children were 99.9%, basically had a 99.9% survival rate. Children under the age of 16, 99.9% survival rate from the pandemic. They were not at risk. In fact, there is almost no group of people on the face of the earth that had a higher survival rate than kids under the age of 16. That's a fact. That is a medical defined fact. Why do they need the jab? Unless your kid has cancer, unless your kid has an autoimmune deficiency, unless your kid has 3 or 4 different comorbidities, like being massively obese and having intense heart disease and autoimmune issues, unless that's your kid has a 99.9% survival rate. Why do they need the jab? Why do they need that? They don't. And if your kid does have these comorbidities and is in this isolated group of people, then that kid can get the jab and or wear a mask to protect them. Why does everyone else have to change their life? They don't. Because that won't make your kid's survival any better. So it's not, they're not being honest with you. And we know this was the British government that was saying, yeah, based on all the data, kids have a 99.9 survival rate. And Elizabeth Warren knows this. Her staff know this. And the data proves it. Kids are fine. They don't need the jab. If you as a parent want to give your kid the jab anyway, you can. That just means that you have to go to your doctor, say, I want the jab for my kid. Is that going to take longer? Yes. Would it cost you money? Maybe. It depends on your insurance. But that's your choice because it's your health care. I don't have to do that. I don't need to have the jab because you want to give it to your kid, even though your kid has a 99.9% survival rate. I don't need to do something that may hurt me because your kid doesn't need it. Statistically, your kid does not need it. So that doesn't mean I'm mandated to do something. But in New York State, along with Senator Warren, they're pissed off because people aren't being forced to comply. And they think we're the bad guys because we're not complying with their non-science. They don't have definitive answers yet. They can't because the studies take 10 to 15 years to do. So they don't have a definitive answer. That isn't part of the scientific process. And they know that. So they're lying to you. They're manipulating you. And they're doing it because, but RFK is bad. RFK is a traitor. He's not a Democrat. We have to punish him. No one else can do what RFK Jr. did because he's supposed to be a Democrat. The bad guy that he is. We have to punish him. That's what this is about. That's what it's all about. Yes, I know. I know. We're going to be finishing up shortly, folks. As for those, I know a lot of people know that I usually go about 5 hours in a program, if not longer. And usually at about the 2.5 hour mark, we usually take a break. And then I come back and I do more of the show. But I'm using the MacBook Air, which is hot now. And because my computer's down. And I still want to thank Peace Logic for providing this to me so I can actually use it and still do the show. So the MacBook Air is hot, so it has to cool down. And I have to go walk my dog, Khan, who's the reason for the puppy fund. And I want him to be healthy, so I got to go walk him and take care of him. So instead of sitting on dead air, I'm not like, what's his name? Not Vosh, the other one. Hassan. I'm not like Hassan. I'm not going to have an empty seat and just have you sit here looking at empty space for half an hour. I'm not that abusive. of my audience. I appreciate you far too much to just have dead air for 30 minutes and expect you to still be here. I'm not going to do that. So instead, I'll end the show with these last few comments. But I wanted to go over that with you. So yeah, they're not angry because RFK isn't making America healthy. He is. It's that he didn't do it as a Democrat, and he's embarrassing Democrats, and he's giving people options and not forcing them to comply. And since he's not a Democrat, he's the devil. That's what that's about. And the media doesn't like to mention it. All right, so the last comment I'm going to take tonight, and then I'm going to jump out of here, is this is from Joel. Hey, Joel, thank you for joining us. And Joel says, I saw Christie criticizing RFK on health issues. Does Christie have any mirrors in his universe? Oh, yeah. Yeah, Chris Christie is out of his mind. He has health issues of his own. Yes, Grace, do catch up. I know today's a short show. Until I can get closer to paying off my dog's bill, and I can get my computer fixed, which is actually, computer's probably only like $200, but I gotta knock down the puppy bill from $3,000. So once I can get that, I'll get that fixed, and then I'll go back to my normal longer show. But so I appreciate that you did jump in, but it's only 2.5 hours. You guys can come back. So, and I hear him screaming right now. So what I will do is I'll end it there. I look forward to seeing your comments. Whether you agree or disagree, leave it in the comments. Tell me, Mike, I think you're right. I think you're out of your mind. If you think that it makes sense or it's crazy, just tell me. I look forward to your comments, whether it's on YouTube, on Facebook, on Rumble, wherever you see the channel. I appreciate that. Please, I hope that you will consider giving us a like. If you'll share this with some of the parts or the whole thing with your friends. And hopefully you may consider subscribing. We would appreciate that. If you can afford $1.50 a month, join my Patreon. If you can't, that's perfectly fine too. If you want to help with the puppy fund so I can pay off my dog's $3,000 bill, hey, please go to my PayPal. You can do that directly there. But no matter what, I hope your football team wins today. I hope that you're having great health. I look forward to speaking to you more. We have many other shows. I'll probably be doing an episode on a very interesting YouGov poll I saw recently about whether you should be a politician or not. And I think that was really interesting. I'll be doing a separate video on that. But until the next time, folks, which will be very soon, I will talk to you again the next time. Thank you.